Alright everybody, it's John from Dragonfly and today's the day. What day you ask? It's the day we finally upgrade the hard drive in this machine from the 960 Pro M.2 to the 970 Pro M.2. So you think, right, easy job, just like anything else, you just clone the drive, call it a day, and then be done with it. If it were only that easy. So remember, in this particular scenario, we only have one M.2 slot in the motherboard, and the drive that's currently in there is the OS drive that obviously that runs Windows. So how do we do that, right? So my first idea was that I would get SATA adapters and I would just throw them in my SATA drive duplicator like I always do and call it a day. So I did get those SATA drive duplicators, and they were $10, and I thought to myself, wow, what a steal, right? So you look inside, and it's a nice looking little adapter for $10. You know, it's got a nice enclosure. So what it does is it converts M.2 to SATA. So I was like, okay, I'll put them in a couple of these. I'll run them through my drive duplicator. It'll take an hour and we'll be done. Well, I didn't read the fine print, so this is why I make these videos, so that you guys don't make the same mistakes that I do. This is an MGFF, an M.2 MGFF drive adapter, not an NvMe drive adapter. So I get the thing and I'm all ready to go. I'm ready to make the video. This is a couple weeks ago, and I can't put the M.2 in there. So this is a problem, and this is a solution. We now have the USB 3.1 Type-C to regular USB 3. Inside this little enclosure is the new 970 Pro. I just filmed a video about how it got in here because it was a little bit of a project, and you can watch it up here. And that now that we've got this ready to go, I'm ready to actually see if I can. I haven't even hooked this up yet, so I don't even know if any of this is going to work. We're totally in uncharted territory. I've actually never cloned an M.2 before, especially when it was the only drive in the machine. So that's part of the reason why I like doing some of this stuff, because it's fun to do things for the first time. So we're going to find out. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to benchmark the current 960 Pro M.2. I'm just going to use the Samsung Magician software, and whatever Samsung says its drive does is what I'm going to go with. This isn't really a benchmarking video. It's just a for the hell of it scenario. Then I am going to clone the current M.2 to another drive in the machine. Well, actually, no. I'm going to see if I can clone it straight to this in real time. So if that works, great. If it doesn't work, I'll still try cloning it to another drive and then restoring the clone to this. I'm not sure if that's how it works. I haven't done this in a while. Anyway, we'll see if we can just clone straight to this and swap them. It might be that easy. And one last thing that I will tell, and then I'm going to benchmark this and we'll see the performance difference, if any. It probably won't be much. But what I needed was more storage. This is a 1 terabyte. What's in there is a 500 gig, and it's running out, and my wife needs a hard drive, so she's getting this one. So lastly, just another pro tip before you start something like this. If your C drive is encrypted, like mine was, I would advise you to unencrypt the drive first, then do the cloning, then re-encrypt your new C drive once it's installed and working. It may work. I think your mileage is going to vary with stuff like that, but when I'm doing a big project like this where I'm ripping my whole computer apart and I'm going to be down for hours, I do not want to have to go back and do it a second time. So I know that if I unencrypt it and clone it, it'll work. I don't know if it's going to work while the drive's encrypted, and I've read enough people out there that have had issues with that. So unencrypt it, clone it, and then encrypt the new C drive once it's in there. So that's what we're going to do. Let's get started. Okay, so here is the Samsung Magician software. We're going to benchmark the current 960 Pro M.2 and see what we get for numbers before we swap out to the 970 Pro. You can see we've written 13.3 terabytes, the drive's in good condition, and we're starting to run out of space here. So that's the reason for the swap, and we'll click on benchmark and see what we get for numbers. This is a previous benchmark I ran a couple of weeks ago. The numbers always change a little bit, so you know, you just run the benchmark. I know that this is Samsung's own tool. There are third-party tools, benchmarking tools out there that can give you more accurate and more in-depth results. This is really just for the hell of it before we do the swap. So let's see what we get. And there you go. So we're looking at 6,563 megabytes per second for reads, 1,873 for writes, and then for random IOPS, input-output cycles per second, I think it is, 287,000 reads and 172,000 writes. So those are pretty good numbers. Now, I've got a 1 terabyte Samsung 850 EVO in here that I previously benchmarked, and there we go. And you can see, if you want to see the difference in the numbers between the 2 generations old and the last generation, that was just from a couple weeks ago. And there you go. The sequential reads are actually a tiny bit faster on the EVO, but then all the other numbers just get blown out hard. The writes are, 4 times faster or 3 times faster, and then the random IOPS are just a nightmare. It's not even close. So if you're curious, the difference in performance between the Pros and the EVOs, those are, according to Samsung's own tool, that's a good comparison for you right there. Let's see how the 970 stacks up to this. So here we are at the Samsung Tools and Software website, which I'll link to down below. You may need to shut off your ad blocker and whitelist the site to get it to load. I had to. First, you'll want to download the latest version of the Samsung Magician if you don't already have it. You'll want to make sure and get the consumer version, not the enterprise version. Then you'll want to scroll down and get the latest version of the data migration tool, also the consumer version, not the enterprise version. And then you're ready to go. So once you get that adapter, that NvMe to USB adapter hooked up, the drive is not going to show. So you need to go initialize it in disk management. So once it comes up, you'll see it prompt you for initialization, and you're going to pick GPT. MBR is the old, GPT is the new. I'm not going to get into it right now, but you want GPT, and hit OK, and it'll tell you that it can't work with some previous versions of Windows. We're not going to be dropping an M.2 drive in a Windows 98 install anytime soon, so don't worry about it. So there you go. You can see the drive is online now, and we are ready to start migrating data. Wow, this doesn't look good, does it? So, as is wont to happen when you do upgrades like this, every single solitary thing that can possibly go wrong does. So we are looking at the opening screen of Clonezilla, which is an open source drive cloning program. It's basically my last hope at this point. If this doesn't work, I don't even know. I'll have to hire somebody. I'm just kidding. I would never do that. But anyway, the Samsung drive cloning software would not see the USB drive as valid. So it would not clone the current M.2 to the USB M.2. So that, left me little option but to kind of go nuclear here, which is what we're doing. So I have not used Clonezilla in a while, so you're going to have to bear with me on this. And I'm definitely not a Clonezilla expert, so we're going to go ahead and choose English. And we're going to keep the default keyboard layout. And blah, blah, blah. Yep. Start Clonezilla. There's a command line prompt for people that actually know what they're doing. So I'm going to go device to device. And we're going to see. I'll do beginner mode since I'm out of my league right now. Let's say this. All right, so we're choosing a source right now, and the source is going to be the 960 Pro, which is what's highlighted. And you can see it is picking up the target, which is where I want to go with this. So this may actually work. So we're going to choose this source. Just make absolutely sure you don't want to screw this up. And then the target is going to be the USB drive, which is this thing. Yeah, fuck that. Okay. Yeah, right. All right, here we go. Hopefully I don't wipe my computer out. So it's just giving us a warning saying all the data on that particular drive will be wiped out, and you're just double checking the name. This is the kind of stuff you can't be too careful with. So that's the one that's going to get wiped. It's got nothing on it, so yep, we want to continue. And then it's giving you a double chance to not kill yourself. So let's do it. Yeah, let's clone the bootloader. I have to do capital Y. Okay, so when this is done, I just want to see if this actually kicks off. So fun fact, I actually burnt this to a disk just because I hadn't burnt one in so long. So I burnt a CD, actually, of all things. I went through my file locker that you might see in some of the videos, and I burnt a CD of Clonezilla, and I booted to the CD, and even that took me a little while to figure out how to do because it's been so long. So we're running off a CD, and we are cloning the M.2 C drive to the USB 3 adapted M.2 970 Pro. So needless to say, I'm kind of on pins and needles right now. But you can see it was about 375 gigs, I want to say, of total data. And what is it saying it's going to take? 12 minutes. It's going at almost 30 gigs a minute. So that's pretty good. My only concern is that this M.2 and the adapter thing may overheat. I hope it doesn't. I did grab it while the computer was still active, and it's definitely getting hot. So there's really just no way to do anything until this is done. So we'll let this go and see what happens. I guess when this is done, I'm just going to power it off, swap the drives, and see what we got. And now we are at the part of the process that I dread the most, which is just taking this thing off my desk and opening it up. Obviously I had to clean it out. Cleaning these things out is always a pain. I don't do water cooling, and I think it has the negative air pressure or whatever because it's pushing out a lot more air than it takes in, which means it gets super dusty. So I try to clean it about every 6 months. I hate cleaning these things. So I just kind of finished that. You can probably see dust flying through the air right now. But the saga continues. I have to take out the graphics card to get to the M.2 slot. So add that to the list of things I really didn't feel like doing today. So I'm going to take it out, and then I will, I don't know, probably show the process of swapping the cards. Okay, I got it all buttoned up. I got it all cleaned out. I got it sitting up there. I'm wicked hot. It was a way hotter day than it was supposed to be today. And the hot lights and everything in here. So I'm sweating my ass off, literally and figuratively. I do not want to take this thing back apart. So I'm really hoping this works. This is one of those things where everything that could have gone wrong has gone wrong. So we're going to see what happens when I fire it up. If we don't see Windows 10 come up, that's going to suck for me. Oh, here we go. Wait a minute. It might have been, because it probably had the driver for the 960 installed. I think the 970 has a different driver, so I don't know if Windows 7 just figured that out, or Windows 10, I'm sorry, figured that out on the fly. I mean, the fact that I'm getting the Windows screen is a really good sign. It's taking way longer than normal, but I did just swap a hard drive, so there might be some things happening in the background. If I can log in, I know I can fix whatever's wrong. Just the question mark is, can I log in? Uh-oh, inaccessible boot device. Okay. Let's see what happens. I mean, if it's in a reboot loop, then I'm in big trouble, but one blue screen reboot isn't the end of the world. I mean, the fact that it got to the Windows 10 screen tells me that the cloning process worked for the most part. What we're probably facing here is a driver issue. And that's part of what the Samsung software does, is it swaps the driver, but it wouldn't see this drive, so not as attached as USB. But yeah, this thing's really struggling. This doesn't look good, so I might be in for a long night. That sucks. So we are in a reboot loop for an inaccessible boot device. So something went wrong with the clone. And man, now I'm back to square one. So this was a scenario so far where the original adapter I bought didn't work because it was for the wrong kind of M.2 device. Then I bought a new adapter that I had a little trouble figuring out, but I got it figured out. Then I hooked it up, and then I couldn't use the Samsung software because it wouldn't write to the USB device even though there was a Samsung drive in it. So then I downloaded Clonezilla, burnt it to a CD, booted to the CD, and cloned the drive from the M.2 to the USB using Clonezilla. Then I took the whole machine apart, cleaned it out, swapped the drives, booted it up, and I'm in a reboot loop. So that is that's what happens when you kind of go off on adventures. They don't always work. And now I'm going to have to figure out what went wrong. So I'm not really sure where to start, because obviously the clone went far enough that it's trying to start Windows 10. I don't know if it's a driver issue, but I don't know. Oh, wait a minute. There is one thing it could be. Hang on. I did have to make a BIOS adjustment when I did the Clonezilla thing, and that might be what's screwing things up. There was a secure boot option where it wouldn't let me boot to the Clonezilla DVD, so I had to set it to other OS because it wouldn't let me secure boot. It wouldn't even let me boot to the disk. So I don't know if that was somehow screwing around with Windows. We're going to find out. That would be great if that's what it is, but it doesn't look like it. There's probably an advanced option within Clonezilla that I'm going to have to find, so I'll probably have to swap the drives back and figure out. There might be an advanced option within Clonezilla that I need to fix and reclone, so that's how it goes sometimes. I will get this fixed, and I'll let you know what the fix is, and I'll update the video. That's all for now. So, here we go. This is going to be the solution. It's a PCI Express NvMe M.2 adapter. Why is this going to work? Because if it doesn't, I'm canceling technology. Anyway, so you could be asking yourself right now, why have you watched up to this point and, you know, I failed so far? And I'm leaving this in for a couple of reasons. One is to show you that not everybody doesn't know everything. My mind was stuck in the way I clone drives and the way I've been doing it for like 10 years is I have a SATA to SATA adapter. I stick 2 SATA drives in an adapter. I press a button, I walk away. An hour later, I come back, I got clone drives. When I was in corporate enterprise, we just had a bigger version of that where you stuck 1 master drive in with, you could have 10 or 20 slaves, or you had an imaging system even better where you had, you know, centralized storage and a program running on every computer that had, you know, a snapshot of everyone's image, you know, categorized by who it belonged to. And if somebody's computer blew up, you could stick a computer on the network, you know, push a button, send that person's image to their computer, and, you know, an hour later they had a carbon copy of what they just lost sitting back on their desk. That's awesome, right? That's millions of dollars in investment and configuration. But my mind was stuck on I wasn't thinking outside the box. My mind was stuck on when I clone a drive, I stick them in a adapter, I press a button, I walk away, and we're done. So when it came to cloning this M.2, my first thought was buy an adapter, which I did, a SATA adapter, but it was a true M.2 adapter, not an NvMe adapter. So I bought it thinking I would pull the old M.2, grab the new M.2, stick them in my SATA adapter, same as what I was used to doing, hit the clone button and walk away. Then when I realized that my adapters were M.2 and not NvMe, I kind of was like, okay, well, I need to get another adapter. So I did, and now I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to make a video, and I want it to be accessible to people, because not everyone's going to have a PCI Express 4 slot in their computer. Frankly, I don't even know if I have one yet. Assuming I do, because it's a gaming motherboard and it has all the bells and whistles on it. I mean, there is a possibility I'm going to pull this thing open and find out I don't even have a slot for it, but I think that's unlikely. I think I'll fit it in. But I know that a lot of people aren't going to have that slot, so this solution isn't going to work for everybody, and that's one of the reasons I wanted an accessible solution. So when I bought that other adapter, the one that didn't work for me, that you saw previously in the video, it's because I know almost everybody has a USB 3.1 slot on their machine, so it was a solution that would have worked for pretty much everyone. And the weird thing is looking at the comments on that adapter, there were people that managed to clone their drives. They probably weren't all Samsungs, and maybe they were using different software. But there were people that successfully cloned to that 3.1 thing. And I could probably get it to work if I wanted to spend my next week screwing around with it, but I don't. So I ordered one of these. You can see I'm obviously wearing a different shirt. It's a different day. It's pouring rain. We just had the end of Hurricane Michael roll through. It wasn't anything for us, but we went from kind of 70-degree, very pleasant weather to now mid-October. We're in the 40s and it's raining. Fall is officially here, and it's a good day to film videos. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull down my computer, throw this thing in, use the Samsung software hopefully to run the clone, and then swap them out, and we should be done. And you know what? If it doesn't work, yeah. Okay, let's go. Okay, so here we are back in the Samsung data migration program, We're going to see if it now picks up the new drive that we tossed into the PCI Express slot. So hit start. And it's asking which drive do you want to use as a source drive because it sees multiple Samsung drives. However, it does default to the C drive, and there's the new one. And so you can just cancel out of that screen because obviously we want to clone the C drive. Now it sees the Samsung 970 Pro in the PCI Express slot, so we can choose that as a destination, and we should be able to kick this off. So now we can see the source disk, the target disk, and we're ready to start. Warning: when cloning starts, all data on the target disk will be deleted and cannot be recovered. Files on the source disk that are open cannot be cloned. Please close all running files before cloning. Would you like to continue cloning? No. Okay, so I think this is where we check out because it won't clone this video file, so I'm gonna have to kill it now, and hopefully the next time you see this, we'll be on the new drive. Okay, so now it's time for the second moment of truth. I assume it's going to work this time because we used the Samsung software, but let's make sure. So just to summarize, what we just did was took out the cloned M.2 card from the PCI adapter, swapped it with the current M.2 card that we've been trying to copy for the last week, and now we're going to turn it on and see if it worked. I just can't catch a break. Now the keyboard doesn't work. Goes back to some issues with the Asus motherboard. There was some onboard USBs that just never worked right out of the box. They offered to RMA it, but I couldn't deal with the downtime, so I never did. So from time to time I have to deal with dumb things like that. Now of course, because it's USB, it didn't pick it up. Because the driver never loaded, so let's try it again. Set the boot order because when I tried to boot up, when I wanted to clone the drive, it started booting to the bad drive. So I had to go in and disable it, and now I had to go in and re-enable it. The fun never ends. not taking for granted that it's going to work this time, because I got this far last time, and then this is when we started the blue screens. There we go. That's a good sign. I think we're good to go. So I'm going to turn it off now, log in, make sure everything's okay. I'm assuming you don't want to stare at the back of my head for that. And then I'm going to jump on and film a little summary. Okay, so here we are. We've successfully cloned and booted from the new drive, and it's time to benchmark it versus the old 960 Pro. You can see the drive's in good condition, and it's now running the latest firmware and Samsung driver. This is important because at first you'll be running the Windows driver and none of this stuff will work. You'll need to download the latest version of the driver and the software in order to use these features and get the best performance out of the drive. So we're going to head over to the benchmarking now and give it a go. And through the magic of time, we're going to see how this drive stacks up against the one that we just swapped out. And here's another thing that went wrong in my little comedy of errors with this drive swap. I had to install the latest version of Samsung Magician, and in the process zapped all my data that had all the drive benchmark numbers in here. So I really wanted to see how this stacked up to the other Samsung drives I have in here, some of the older Gen ones. So that's okay. We're just going to go ahead and use the magic of time again and benchmark the 850 Evo that I still have in here as my video editing drive. So let's go ahead and do that, and we'll see the comparison between a 970 Pro NvMe drive and an 850 Evo SATA drive. And here we go. You can see the numbers are not even close. It's a total wipeout. It's amazing the performance difference here. It's like, in some cases, more than quadruple the performance. So in a minute, I'm going to superimpose the numbers from the 960 Pro I just took out. There they are. And you can see that there is a significant difference in the IOPS, the random IOPS, which is a big factor. And you can see the difference between even the two NvMe drives. So there you go. And that's what it looks like. All right, guys, here we go. So we're finally at the end. The cloning's finally done. I finally took care of it. I can probably hear my neighbor mowing the lawn outside, so sorry for the noise. But so many things went wrong with this and went unexpected with this that I had to make a list because there was just no way that I was going to be able to remember all of these and go through it. So just to summarize, I am reading off a piece of paper here. So the first thing I did was I bought the wrong adapter. I had the idea that I would like to stick the two M.2 NvMe drives into SATA adapters, throw them in my drive duplicator, press a button, and be done with it. And had that actually, if that idea had actually worked out, this would have took like 20 minutes and it would have been done. Instead, it's dragged on for over a week. So that was the first thing that went wrong. The second thing that went wrong was that I bought a USB adapter that came with no instructions. It was an NvMe USB Type-C to 3.1 adapter. I bought it because it was going to be able to take care of the high-speed piece of it. It had no instructions whatsoever. I had to go figure out just how to build it. I mean, there's cooling issues with these things, so it was a matter of getting the drive in there correctly and then getting the heat sink on it and everything and getting that, getting it all cased up and ready to go. So that was another thing that kind of just sidetracked me. So then I threw it on, attached it to the PC, hit the Samsung data migration software, and it wouldn't clone to a USB drive. It saw it sitting there, but it didn't see it as a Samsung drive, so it wouldn't clone. So then I burnt Clonezilla, which is an open source free cloning software, to a CD of all things. At this point I was like going delirious, so I just figured I'd burn a CD because, why wouldn't you want to do that at that point? So I burn a CD, boot to it. It sees the obviously the C drive, the source C drive, and it also saw the 3.1 drive, and it did allow me to clone to the 3.1 drive, which I filmed. So then I tried booting to that cloned 3.1 image. I took the machine out, swapped the drives, put it back, fired it up, got to the Windows boot up screen. So I know that the cloning worked to a certain extent because it did try to boot to Windows 10, but it ended up with a blue screen reboot loop that I wasn't able to fix. So then I tried a bunch of IT tools. to repair the, master boot record and all the rest of it, and just different, startup repair utility in Windows 10, all these different things to fix a machine that won't boot. None of them worked. It actually just made the issue worse. So then at that point, I knew I had to find another solution. So then I bought the correct adapter, which did end up working, which was an NvMe NvMe to PCIe adapter that stuck into a NvMe Type 4 X4 slot on your motherboard. Now, that will work for you if you know you have a free PCIe Express slot on your motherboard, but not everyone's going to have that. So it's kind of one of those things, if you know you have it, then you know that that solution is going to work for you. But the reason why I kind of shied away from doing that in the first place was, A, because I didn't think of it because I had my mind set on the SATA to SATA cloning experience, and B, because I knew that not everybody's going to have that free slot. So I wanted to try to make a video where I knew anybody could do, but it's not that easy when you only have a single M.2 NvMe slot. In addition to that, when I did stuck the bad cloning, the bad copy in the NvMe slot and tried to boot up, what went wrong there? It tried to boot to the bad image, so it for some reason it prioritized the NvMe adapter for a boot up instead of booting straight to the normal C drive, which was higher in the priority. But I had to go into the BIOS and I had to completely disable the booting to basically everything except for the internal M.2 drive, which it had always booted to in the first place and was actually higher in the drive order. Whatever, so I had to change a BIOS order after I stuck that thing in. So then, swap the drives. We got my little Greyhound here. I don't think she's showing up on the camera, but she's here. Then after I swapped the drives, I set the machine back up, and while I was filming the building the machine back up, the camera died on me. Then when I got everything set back up, I set up the computer and I put the keyboard into a non-working USB slot on the back of the motherboard, and I couldn't get into the BIOS because the keyboard didn't work. So then I swapped that back to the right and rebooted the machine, and I had to set the drive order again in the BIOS because since I had disabled that before, I had, I had swapped out the drive that was there. It wasn't seeing it, so I had to go back into the BIOS and fix that. Let's see. Then I had to install the Samsung NvMe driver, the latest version for the new Samsung Pro 970. So I had to go to the Samsung site, download that, and install it. Not a big deal in and of itself. If that had been the only hiccup in this whole operation, it wouldn't have been a big deal, but we're up to the 8th screw up getting to that. And then the 9th and final was that I had to uninstall the Samsung Magician. I had stated the Samsung Magician 5.0 software because I remember at one point there was a firmware update, I think with Samsung Magician 5.1. I had skipped that version because I was reading that there was a firmware update that was like bricking hard drives at that point, and this is before I even had an M.2 drive in the machine. So I had an older version of the software on my computer, and it wouldn't see the Samsung 970. So when I updated to the latest version, it blew away all of my previously benchmarked histories, which I was going to compare to the drive that's in there now. Which was half the reason to benchmark it once it was in there. I do have them on like the first video that I filmed. This is like the 20th. So I'm going to try to go back and grab them and shove them into that video before I edit this whole mess together. And hopefully that will you'll see, because the whole thing was I wanted to compare the benchmarking of the 960 Pro to the 970 Pro. That was like one of the two things I was trying to accomplish with making this video in the first place. So having said all that, you see all the things that kind of came up as issues here. And so the final thing is, would I recommend a swap like this? And if you're talking about an identical swap to what I just did, you have a single M.2 NvMe slot on your motherboard, and you buy a second M.2 NvMe drive and you want to swap it, you want to clone it and swap it. Would I recommend the average user to take on a project like this? Absolutely not. If you're an enthusiast and you've been building your computers your whole life, you're probably not watching this anyway. If you did, kudos to you. You're not going to make these dumb mistakes that I did. But if you're just like an average everyday user that kind of want, maybe you do have an NvMe M.2 drive in your computer and you want to swap to a new one, would I recommend you do this? I mean, maybe if you watched all this and you're comfortable with it, then go for it. But to the average user, I would not recommend taking on a project like this unless you know for a fact you have two NvMe M.2 slots on your motherboard and you can just put a second drive in there and use the Samsung software to clone it. Or if you know you have an extra PCIe X4 slot on your motherboard, if you do, and you know your way around your BIOS, then that would be the only other circumstance where I would recommend somebody to go ahead and take on a project like this. So the last question is, why did I leave all the mistakes in? I left them in because that's the whole reason to make the video. I wanted to show people that, hey, even if you know what you're doing, you can still run into things that you're not expecting. And I mean, that's what being an IT guy is. This is what we do all the time. You have millions of lines of code. You have millions of different combinations of adapters and drives and everything else that can be out there. And a lot of what you do in this job, if you do it for a living, is you bang your head against the wall trying to figure out how to do stuff like this because there's no guide. I mean, I don't work in a big shop. I can't bounce off ideas off of people. The only thing I can do is research it myself and then do trial and error. Am I going to be doing something like this? Maybe as NvMe drives become more adopted in the future, I may have to clone more of these for customers. I mean, right now I've never done this. This was my first time doing it. So I didn't have the experience, and this is how you get the experience. And, am I going to be doing this for customers? Probably not, at least not anytime soon. I mean, I'm just rolling out NvMe drives in laptops and machines now, and I have been for the last couple of years. And some of these, the workstations give you access, but some of the laptops don't even have like a, you have to rip the whole laptop apart just to get to the hard drive. Are people going to want to pay for that? If there's an issue, maybe. It depends on, if the data was backed up or that kind of thing. So I'm getting into the weeds now. But long story short is, I hadn't done this before. I ran into a bunch of unexpected issues with it. And I wanted people to see all that stuff so that they, A, don't make the same mistake I do, and B, so that you can see that people, even that know what they're doing, can still run into issues and have problems and have to figure it out. This mistake cost me, or series of mistakes, cost me about $100 in parts and hours and hours and hours of extra time that I didn't expect to put into it, especially that I videoed it, and a ton of frustration. So the reason I left it all in is so that people can see that and make their own decision if they want to take on a project like this. Maybe after you see it and you see all the mistakes, you say, hey, I can do this. So go ahead and do it. I mean, be my guest. I hope you put it in the comments that the video helped you and that you didn't run into these issues. I mean, God knows how many times I've jumped on YouTube and, watched something and watched somebody, say, hey, don't do this or don't do that. And I think usually a lot of times people will take that stuff out of a video and just make it look like they're Mr. Perfect and they never have an issue because they already went through it 10 times. But this was kind of an adventure for me too. So that's why I left all of this in there. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you watched it this far, thank you very much for sticking around. And I hope you like and subscribe and give me your feedback. And I look forward to making a lot more videos in the future, but man, am I glad that this one's done. So thanks again, and we'll see you soon.